David Shookman reporting. Well, joining us now from Fife is Stuart Haszeldine. He's from the University of Edinburgh's School of Geosciences and the world's first professor of carbon capture and storage. Well, we're very lucky to have you with us tonight, Professor Haszeldine. Just tell us briefly, in layman's terms, if you would, what carbon capture is, how it works.
Okay, it's very clear from the evidence the IPCC has laid out that we need to capture carbon. We can't carry on emitting and dumping it into the atmosphere. And we can do that by carbon capture and storage. That works by burning fossil fuel, coal, oil and gas. And instead of dumping that into the atmosphere, capture the carbon dioxide with a solvent, rather like lime water at school. You then liquefy that carbon dioxide under pressure, rather like pressure in a fire extinguisher, transport that 200 or 300 kilometers to drill deep beneath the ocean, 1 or 2 or 3 miles deep, and inject that carbon dioxide deep underground where it dissolves in the water to form very salty, fizzy water, and it will stay there for thousands and millions of years.
It was first proposed in the 1990s, I understand, by the Norwegians, and yet we only have one facility in the world that can actually store carbon in this way. It's in Canada, isn't it?
Well, that's half true, but it's a lot better than that, because we've been capturing carbon in oil refineries since the mid-1920s. We've been injecting carbon into oil fields since the 1970s, and we've been operating storage underneath the North Sea, as you said, since the middle 1960s, transporting carbon dioxide from coal gasification plants in the United States since 2000. And last month, in the 2nd of October, we opened the first boundary dam plant in Saskatchewan, Canada. But there are other plants around the world in the United States and Canada and projects in Australia following on soon behind in 2015. And the UK has 2 projects under evaluation now. First one should start at Peterhead in Scotland in 2018, and the other one at Drax in eastern England, commercial in 2022. So the momentum is growing fast, but we need to go faster and faster.
It does seem, though, that we're trying to play catch-up. What's the hold-up been?
Well, effectively, we have indeed lost a decade on this, because the first commercial plants to capture carbon from electricity generating were proposed in the UK in the middle 2000s. But it's taken governments maybe perhaps 10 years to work out how to finance this. The technology is there, we know how to do that, but it's countries like the UK have worked out how to pay for the running costs. And you do that with 2 methods, really, which governments worldwide need to adopt. They don't need to wait for a climate change global agreement. They can do this country by country. Firstly, you need to set a target for the amount of carbon you want to capture by 2030. And secondly, you need to find a way for paying for that. And it's clear that you need to pay for that with an extra price on electricity, just like we're paying a bit of extra price for wind power and a bit of extra price for nuclear power. And the extra price cost, if we decarbonise the whole of the UK power stations by doing this, it's about £120 extra per household per year. That's a small price to pay for huge insurance to cut 1/3 of the emissions of the UK for climate insurance into the future.
I'm sure scientifically you would win your case every time, but you've got to deal with the politicians at some point, some of whom, of course, want to see our bills coming down, not going up.
Well, politicians have to be real on this, and you can't have your cake and eat it. Politicians worldwide have talked and talked and talked and expected this to be delivered for nothing. It's very clear from domestic landfill, for example, throwing away our rubbish, that we don't tip away our rubbish into the next door's yard. We don't tip our rubbish into the street and expect somebody else to clean it up. So we should not be tipping away our carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. We have to pay a bit more to capture that, and that will create green jobs. Extra new jobs in the new economy are the fastest growing area of investment in the UK just now, and that ripple can be exported outwards across Europe, into the United States, and of course into China.
Professor Stuart Haszeldine from Edinburgh University, thank you very much for your time tonight.